Chapter 17 Maha Samadhi. For several years before the body's end, at least from 1947 onwards, the health of Sri Bhagavan had caused alarm. Rheumatism had not only crippled his legs, but attacked his back and shoulders also. Even apart from that, there was an impression of great weakness, although he himself refused to take notice of it. It was felt that he needed more nutritious diet than the ashram food, but he would not consent to taking anything extra. He was not yet 70, but looked much more aged. Not careworn, for there was absolutely no sign of care. He had known none. Just aged and very frail. Why was it that one who had been vigorous and robust, who had known little sickness in life, and no grief or care, should have aged so much beyond his years? He that taketh upon himself the sins of the world, he who alleviates the karma of the devotees, it was only by himself drinking the poison churned up that Shiva could save the world from destruction. As Sri Shankara wrote, O Sambhu, Shiva, Lord of life, thou bearest also the burden of thy devotees' temporal life. There were many signs, always inconspicuous, how even physically Sri Bhagavan bore the burden. A devotee, Krishnamurti by name, has related in a Tamil journal issued by Janaki Amal, a lady devotee, how he went and sat in the hall one day when he had a severe pain in the index finger. He told no one, but to his surprise, he saw Sri Bhagavan hold and rub the same finger on his own hand, and the pain disappeared. Many others have known similar relief. For Sri Bhagavan, life on earth was no treasure to be economized. It was indifferent to him how long it lasted. There was once a discussion in the hall as to how long he would live. Some quoted the astrologers as saying that he would live to be 80. Others either denied the accuracy of astrology or doubted its applicability to Sri Bhagavan, who had no karma to work out. All the while, Bhagavan listened to the discussion, smiling but taking no part in it. A newcomer, puzzled by this, asked, "What does Bhagavan think about it?" And Bhagavan did not reply, but smiled approvingly when Devaraja Mudaliar replied for him, saying, "Bhagavan does not think about it." The whole last year of his life was an illustration of this. The devotees grieved over the suffering and dreaded the threatened death. He did not. Early in 1949, a small nodule appeared below the elbow of his left arm. It was not considered serious, but in February the ashram doctor cut it out. Within a month it returned, larger and more painful, and this time it was recognized as a malignant tumor and caused general alarm. Towards the end of March, doctors came from Madras and operated. The wound did not heal up properly, and the tumor soon began to grow again, larger and higher up. Henceforth, there was an air of tragedy and inevitability about the march of events. The orthodox medical men let it be known that they could not cure the tumor, but could only operate, and that it might return again, despite radium treatment, and if it did, would eventually prove fatal. Those of the other medical schools believed that they could cure it, and that operating would only bring it back in a worse form, as in fact happened, but they were not allowed to try in time. When the tumor returned after the March operation, the doctors suggested amputating the arm. But there is a tradition that the body of a jnani should not be mutilated. Indeed, it should not be pierced with metal, and even the operation had been a breach of tradition. Sri Bhagavan had submitted to that, but he refused the amputation, saying, "There is no cause for alarm. The body itself is a disease. Let it have its natural end. Why mutilate it? Simple dressing of the part is enough." His saying, "There is no cause for alarm," led to the hope that he would recover, despite the words that followed and despite the medical opinion. But for him, death was no cause for alarm. Bhagavan also gave rise to hope by saying, everything will come right in due course. But in fact, it was for us to perceive the rightness of what occurred. He never doubted it. About this time, he translated into Tamil verse a stanza from the Bhagavatam, where it goes like this: let the body, the result of fructifying karma, remain still or move about, live or die. The sage who has realized the self is not aware of it, just as one in a drunken stupor is not aware of his clothing. Sometime later, Bhagavan expounded a verse from the Yoga Vasistam that went like this: the yoni who has found himself as formless pure awareness is unaffected though the body be cleft with a sword. The sugar candy does not lose its sweetness though broken or crushed. Did Sri Bhagavan really suffer? He said to one devotee, they take this body for Bhagavan and attribute suffering to him. What a pity. And to one of the attendants he said, where is pain if there is no mind? And yet Bhagavan showed normal physical reactions and normal sensitivity to heat and cold. And a devotee, S.S. Cohen, records him as having said years later, if the hand of the yoni were cut with a knife, there would be pain, as with anyone else. But because his mind is in bliss, he does not feel the pain as acutely as others do. It is not that the body of the yoni does not suffer injury, but that he does not identify himself with the body. The doctors and some of the attendants were convinced that there was pain and that in the later stages it was excruciating. Indeed, the doctors were amazed at Sri Bhagavan's indifference to pain, at his complete unconcern, even during an operation. The question of his suffering, like the question of our karma, exists only from the point of view of duality. From Bhagavan's point of view, the point of view of Advaita, neither had any reality. It was with this meaning that he said more than once to devotees, I am only ill if you think I am. If you think I am well, I shall be well. So long as a devotee believed in the reality of his own body and its suffering, so long for him the body of the Master was real and suffered also. For a week or two after the March operation, a village herbalist was allowed to try his treatment, but it brought no cure. Sri Bhagavan said to another aspirant who was passed over, I hope you don't mind when you have taken so much trouble with your medicines. It was never any thought of his own condition, only consideration for those who wished to treat him, and loyalty to whatever doctor was in charge. Occasionally, Bhagavan protested at the amount of attention bestowed on his body. Several times, when there seemed to be an improvement, he declared that he wanted no more treatment. The tumor, diagnosed now as a sarcoma, sapped his little remaining vitality. And yet, even as he weakened, his face grew gentler, more gracious, more radiantly beautiful. At times his beauty was almost painful to behold. The arm was heavy and inflamed and the tumor growing. Occasionally he would admit, there is pain, but he would never say, I have pain. In August, a third operation was carried out and the wound treated with radium again in the hope of destroying the affected tissues and preventing the return of the tumor. The same afternoon, a few hours after the operation, Sri Bhagavan was so gracious as to sit on the veranda of the dispensary where it had been performed, so that the devotees could file past and have darshan. One could see that he was exhausted, but there was no sign of suffering in his face. I had come for the day from Madras, and as I stood before him, the radiance of his smile was such that even exhaustion ceased to be visible. At noon the next day he returned to the hall so as not to inconvenience other patients by occupying the dispensary.